Cool. Another edition of Esoteric Book Club. We read chapters 6 and 7, right? Of the Fruitful Darkness. Oh, she's wrapping up. Oh, her tortoise got sick, so Britannia will be here in a second. I know. Well, how do tortoises get sick?
Mm.
I don't know. She's wrapping up a vet's visit. Um, so yeah, these two chapters, the way of the story and the way of non-duality. Let's do, I guess, overall impressions and then get into it. I felt, yeah, I mean, I like her style of story, I think she did a good job of storytelling um throughout these chapters. Or just, yeah, her anthropological perspective is very interesting. I mean, I have a hard, I don't know, I do find just some resistance, but I don't know if it's my reading comprehension or like, and it's a little all over the place sometimes for me, but I mean, that's the negatives. I really think the content's beautiful and her experience seems like just so vast. And it's really important to share these individual people's stories. Like, you do connect with them. And I feel like they'd be really honored to have their stories be represented the way that she's sharing them, which is cool. Non-duality, the second chapter was interesting. I feel like I don't practice this way as much right now. So, I mean, I feel like magic is about kind of dissecting things a bit more than what she talks about. And I'm excited to talk about that in group. Um, yeah, I mean, but I think the quotes were really beautiful. And yeah, like obviously connecting to like the net of the web of life is like such a beautiful thing that we all get to practice during meditation and just in daily lives. And her connection to nature is a good reminder um to remember where we come from and where we're going. So that's really nice. Overall good, easy, flowed through. Yeah, good read. What were your impressions, Cody?
I'm finding myself kind of frustrated and more frustrated with these chapters. The first one, I think I liked that one a little more. It's like confirms a lot of my own biases about things, spirituality and stuff. It's like it more I'm getting frustrated just because it's not really giving me anything new. It's
I
kind of
know.
like rehashing stuff I already have read a lot about and I've experienced.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
I mean, I think I like what you said about the stories and her like recounting these people's stories. That's nice. I'm glad you put it that way. Um, because I think it is important to remember these life ways and stuff. But sometimes I get frustrated. I'm getting frustrated with like those are their life ways,
Yeah.
like what do I do? What do we do? How do we um get into our own ways of connecting with nature and story and non-duality. And I think she is kind of pointing the way, and I think there's like a lot of suggestions, but it's also like still kind of feels like it's romanticizing
Mm-hmm.
these other cultures and like demonizing this culture and like not getting
Mm-hmm.
really anything from this culture to grow with. Um, and that's like that's been kind of frustrating for me with a lot of books. And that's kind of why, again, I like Frater Acker's work because he's trying to build something that's like culturally relevant,
Yeah,
that's um, kind of from the ground up. He is actually kind of rebuilding from the ground up in a sense,
agreed.
old text and stuff, but whatnot. But So yeah, it's the stories are nice, and I definitely found some really good quotes that I highlighted in these chapters. That there are some really beautiful passages, and she does put things really neatly in places. I do appreciate that. Definitely quotables. So Yeah.
I no, I was frustrated as well. Not to the extent. I think because I just tried to read it as like an anthropological text more though so than like a spiritual text, which is a bummer because it does seem like, I mean, it kind of points the fruitful darkness. Like I keep waiting for learning how to like metamorphosize darkness or something. Like she alludes to like um escaping death. And there were different parts where she told stories of people's practices that took them there, but it doesn't seem like she experienced. I don't know. Like, I'm like, did you experience those though? Like, were those a part of their culture and you're just rehashing it? Like, I'm a little, but maybe it's just surface level, this book, you know? I don't know. Can't quite tell what her depth is, which I feel like I should know by now.
Yeah, I mean, she's rehashing, she's has a lot of words that like, yeah, you can comprehend intellectually, a lot of stuff that's just like rehashing this old wisdom that you can find anywhere if you look. Um, and so like has she really, I mean, she has had the mystical experiences, I know, but then what does she do with them? And I feel like she's compelled to write a book because she doesn't know what else to do with these things. And that's, I've been getting a little bit cynical about spirituality in general, and most spirituality, and like examining my own pretty intensely. But really, I am kind of in so doing, I kind of am judging others, which I know isn't like, that's not that fruitful to do that. Um, but there's certain things about this stuff that's like, yeah, what we can have these mystical experiences, we can connect with nature, but then what, and
Yeah.
then like it's like we don't have the cultural apparatus to like make that a meaningful life. Like we're kind of stuck in this like techno capitalist nightmare in a sense where like we have to like figure out what we're going to do to make money, and it's probably going to involve some kind of exploitation of some kind of the planet, of other people, like, because there's not really other ways. We're not really given the opportunity to just like farm corn, beans, and squash or whatever, and
Yeah.
just like and connect with our land in that way. And it's
I mean,
like,
there
and
are,
it's kind of sad. And so this book kind of makes me sad, and that it's
yeah.
like has all these life ways that are like really are dying, you know.
Hmm.
And she even says they know that they're dying, like
Yeah.
So it's like, I think they are. The flame is being kept alive, and I think that's good. But a lot of people are,
Yeah. Suffering.
well, yeah, a lot of people are suffering, but a lot of people are going to these places and like learning a little bit of shamanism or whatever, and then like bringing it up here and like
Exploiting it.
becoming, yeah, exploiting it like crazy
Yeah.
nowadays. So it's,
I feel you. I mean, feel you in a sense of like, I don't want to make money off of my spiritual practice, you know? And for a lot of my peers or just people around me, it's like that's what you do, you know, when you've invested time in anything, you need to profit from it. And it's like, that's not the point here, you know? I mean, the time is for my own evolution and like, you know, and to share that with others freely because that's where it goes. That's just an exchange, you know, it's not like for profit or not, it's just what you do being connected to others. So um and yeah, I do think that you can learn like tidbits and then take it back here and then go really far with them. I feel like more focus on interpersonal relations with people in our like society is where like the healing can come from if you're going to participate in society in that way, you know? Um, and then I also do think that I think we talked about this a bit last time, that there are movements that are outside of society that are getting a lot stronger, at least with, yeah, Ubuntu contributionalism and like I feel like there's some fringe things that are trying to come into play because I do feel like our society is crumbling and everybody feels it. Um, it's not sustainable and everybody's like struggling so hard. Um, not really knowing what to do about it. Again, I don't know if like in our lifetimes we're going to see the full collapse, but I mean, it's kind of inevitable with any empire. Um, so it's just like, what are we going to be here when, it's just like, what's going to happen there is kind of the like the question, I think a lot of people have seen glimpses of what the end looks like. But again, those visions are not stable. And I do think there's a lot of like leveling that spiritual people are trying to do to prevent the fall from being that hard. So I guess it's just a we'll see. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Yeah, I don't I'm not sure if spiritual people are doing as much as actually like really non-spiritual people in leveling. Um I think spiritual people need to do better at it. Um I think
I
I think
agree.
because non-spiritual people are like people who are like actually focusing on real world um like scientific like
Advancement, yeah.
advancement, that not necessarily technological but scientific advancement, like understanding um understanding ecologies really well and understanding the mechanisms of climate change and really understanding how we can better like how we can better organically farm or whatever, like and restore the soil and do all that kind of stuff. Like spiritual people, and maybe they're spiritual also, a lot of these people who are doing this stuff,
Yeah.
but um but that's not like the focus, that they're not
Yeah.
like um and so um I think
I
that
mean,
stuff is probably like gonna do us better than what like just what we're kind of trying to maybe do in this kind of this vague notion of the astral or something.
I mean,
But
2 points that came to mind. I mean, first is like I know a lot of people, I agree because a lot of people that I find that are spirit like are actually trying to work on their stuff and be on a path, like get so depressed and kind of inundated with the things that they have to clear for themselves that there's kind of like a lot. Like, I mean, we had like 3 suicides in our community like this week, which is like really outstanding, like a lot. And one, I mean, it's like, and then there's like shady reasons. It's just like they go really deep, like you don't know like the associations with some of these things. Like again, the underground's just like it's kind of gnarly, and like the belly of LA, like so I mean, I'm not trying to laugh at that. That's not like, but like it's and I think that the people, I mean, they were loved by the community. So there is like these like kind of spiritual people that are dying, because of that. And then I think also like, but I think that, I mean, on your point, the second thing was that like though one person being that is a lot brighter than people not, you know what I mean? So it doesn't take that many for it to like actually have like a big change, I think. I don't know. I mean, still kind of working on what that looks like and trying to see it a little bit more clearly, but um I would argue that scientists in those fields are probably more spiritual than we give them credit for, in a lot of regards. I mean, maybe not, maybe not. I don't know that. I don't hang out with a lot of scientists, but um, I would think that there's a lot more of that. They just, I mean, I have met though like scientists who are extremely spiritual and can't get their works like published that way, without it being. And so they're trying to find loopholes and like ways to like get a lot of their like theories and practices like actually more mainstream, like that's what I've seen. I have seen that firsthand like a few times. Um,
yeah,
so I don't know.
it's tough because biases like form easily, and when you have like a really strong kind of belief system that's like maybe a little bit woo woo,
Hmm.
like, but you still study um physics or something, that woo woo might bias you away from like good, actual good research. I
Hmm.
think sometimes I think that often does happen, and that's why you do have a lot of pseudoscience like physics books that are written by real physicists that are like so so shat upon by, and some of that stuff might like later come to light or be like better understood from a different angle, but right now it's just like not the best research, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but so you do have a lot of that kind of stuff, but and that stuff still sells because it's like because the spiritual community buys shit, you know, buys it, you know. It's like so there's definitely like reward for like potentially like misleading information, a lot of
Hmm.
misleading information.
Hmm.
Um, so
Did you read the article Lael shared on our Discord? She
I
just
don't think I
recently
did.
shared it. Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah,
haven't posted in there for a really long time, but it
yeah.
was really interesting. And it kind of mentioned some of the things you were saying. So that's why I didn't know if you'd read it or
Uh,
not. But
yeah.
yeah.
It's just tough. I mean, we're in such an odd informational age, and a lot of people doing pretty deep spiritual work, which like it's always going to be like nobody's pure to the point of just like receiving like pure messages. You know, everything's gonna is filtered through these like biased and conditioned personalities. And most of the gurus that are out there claiming to have channeled like pure information are really full of shit. Like I was just reading about Rudolf Steiner. Oh my god.
Oh, I don't know a lot.
Yeah. Anyway, he was racist, like very very racist.
Who was he? I know the name, but
Theosophy.
oh,
Yeah. He started Waldorf schools.
oh,
Um,
oh yeah.
a lot of people in the occult world today, like he's really popular, new age stuff. Still, a lot of people send their kids to Waldorf schools and
Wow.
still like recite Steiner and all this stuff. But the funny thing is like he wrote a lot in German. I think maybe all in German,
Mhm.
and there's been a tendency to for anybody translating into English to just leave out the racist shit. You know, just like
Good.
not, yeah, or not translate it right to like even be racist. So it's like, but yet there's still like this undercurrent of kind of eugenicist kind of
Yeah.
thinking, and like this idea of purity and like that you can, yeah. All the Akashic record stuff, that's like that's big. That's Steiner's big stuff. He it that came from like earlier, like Madame
Yeah.
Blavatsky. Um, but he's one of the big like perpetuators of that.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think he knew Blavatsky too. They were contemporaries. But anyway, um
Very interesting.
I guess this relates to this chapter, the first chapter, like stories, and that's these were the thoughts that I was having reading this chapter. It was like, yeah, stories are powerful in like shaping the way we relate to the world, and like it's really important to have really good good stories. And right now we're like in this world where like we have no idea what a good story is, what's going to be helpful to the planet, what's going to be helpful to us. And of course she shares these other cultures, but these are like deeply, and again it's like deeply embedded stories, so deep in their culture, ancestry, the landscape, you know, that like we're just like so alienated from that we don't have that. So like of course we're gonna just watch TV and get our story, get various stories, and let's like go down rabbit holes on the internet.
Yeah.
This was written before the internet rabbit hole, so
Oh,
I hope
huh.
thanks for that.
True.
Yeah, yeah.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, geez. Okay, well, that's a good lens to read this book from it then as well, you know? Like there's probably, I mean, she's talking about the ecological stuff then and like now, geez, I mean, it's like next
Yeah.
level, but I know we aren't connected to even, you know, family stories. Like people don't really share a lot of family stories and things that happened, you know? And I mean, I think there's a lot of shame wrapped up in a lot of people's stories or a lot of like, I mean, with information sharing too, it's hard because it's hard to trust like things, you know, sources and what's brainwashing you, what's not, how your information is being used against you, like data mining and whatever, you know. I mean, I went through that. I don't remember, I don't know if I think it's right when I started the group. Yeah, I just like deleted everything online of myself, you know? And it's like great. It was so cleansing. And I spent a solid year like off of social media and just, you know, I mean, barely went on like, I don't know. Like I really didn't have any form of interaction there. And it was great. Like came back a totally different person. But I mean, now I'm fully connected, you know. I mean, I don't do the clickbaity stuff or whatever the news social, you know. I'm like whatever about that. But yeah, I feel you. I think that there's I think more stories, but also being mindful of how we like when I was reading it, I was more thinking about like the stories that I know from my experiences than like making me bias against like people or things too. So like also being able to be malleable in what the stories are that you tell yourself are trying to convey um is like was my takeaway with more immediate stories of like what you've been through or how you repeat things in your head, you know, play a big part into your perception of, I mean, especially when you're talking about other people, it's like moving forward with that person or understanding how to interact with them, you know, um, transmuting some of that is a good thing, you know, I think. I mean, people that come
Yeah,
up here, especially.
for sure. Because it is like, yeah, we're in like such a environment of so many conflicting stories, so many different stories that we definitely need to be, and like even in my own head, like there's conflicting stories, and that's like why there's like tension in myself, like in my like sphere of being or whatever, my wholeness of being is like, because there's that part of me that's like, I need to have a job and like, you know, make ends meet independently and blah blah blah. And then there's the part of me that's like, yeah, you don't need that. You have like you have everything you need. You can make it. You have talents and skills that you can make it. They make things work. You know, the faith in the like whole. You know, that's like to me that's what that is like. It's faith that like this like container universe that is me, that is actually me, and everything and everyone else,
Mhm.
you know, is has, you know, it's like it's good, you know, like faith in the ground, the basic ground, basic sanity they call it in Buddhism.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But then like there's the basic sanity, but then there's all these parts that all these stories that are like just come from various sources that like clash in various ways, you know, there's like that create tension and that like create conflict within the ground um, of emptiness.
I being mindful of that is like I think the only way. I mean, that's, you know, I'm very middle path of that. So like as you're talking about like you feeling these extremes, like what is the balance, like how do you maintain balance through that to like navigate forward? Like I mean, it sounds like you're getting a good grasp on that. I mean, at least from what I'm hearing. Um
Yeah, because the balance is just is the ground, is like the emptiness, which all this stuff sends. It's just like noise in a vacuum, you know, like or like noise in the midst of emptiness. The emptiness is the ground. So like empty space, all this stuff is just contained within empty space. So it's kind of meaningless. It becomes like it just fades into the ether, you know.
yeah.
Doesn't have.
Yeah. I mean, and I do think it's important to be critical of all sides. So it's kind of a good thing to be skeptical of spiritual people. It's also, I mean, maybe a good thing to like have an open mind or like listen to, or like whatever. But like grain of salt with everything, like, or just, I don't know, maybe not grain of salt with everything, but you know what I'm trying to say? Like it's important, and that. But I think, yeah, I think with some of the way that it was worded in this chapter, in particular, it was like, you need to have stories so that the earth doesn't die, and that's like, I don't like that. Like, I don't like that narrative personally. Oh, I think the sound went out.
Oh yeah, I muted it because my dog was going crazy because Robin just got home. She barks really loud. Um, but yeah, what was I saying?
So I was saying, she was like, stories, maintain stories so that the earth doesn't die, is just like the whole point.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure to like
Yeah.
hone in on the right stories. And then like again, like what or again, like I think what people might get out of that is like, oh, I'm gonna go learn a little bit about the Huichol Indians and like learn some of their life ways, and then I'm gonna bring it back up here, and then like I can tell people, and I can make I can make money telling people about it. And then it's like you're not, and it's totally removed. You're removing and exploiting the story. It's like so you can't, and I think that's what like because that's what she's romanticizing. So that's what people are gonna do, and I think that's this kind of book is what has caused a lot of people doing that
Yeah.
because like not a lot of people can actually get the depth I think she got out of it. I don't, and she was in a time that she could just like she could do it without having to do that because that's like because she was able to travel and she was genuine in her wanting to understand and she probably didn't monetize it. She probably doesn't never made a lot of money. I'm guessing she probably didn't sell that many books. Like maybe she made a small living or something selling books, but that's about it. Whereas like some of these people are like, they have online stores, all these crystals and shit that they're selling,
Yeah.
they're like YouTubing all the time and you know influencers that are actually making a lot of money.
Yeah.
But dang, dog.
Oh, it's okay. I mean, my
This,
family's like yelling in the background. So can
oh
you hear
really?
them? Yeah.
No.
Like my cousin and grandma. My grandma can't hear. And then my cousin's, 7. So she's
Oh
screaming,
no. Yeah.
um,
But like, it's I guess it's like yeah, I mean it's true. Like we need to be mindful of how we use stories and how we take in stories, and that's like and I think that is for me that's a lesson that can be gleaned from this chapter. But I don't know how many people are going to read this chapter and like and
think,
actually like yeah think that and be critical of the stories that they're actually getting
yeah.
and just be mindful of how we self-talk our stories and what kinds of thinking like thinking like these a lot of these purity myths and like that we need to like purify ourselves and heal all our
Yeah.
wounds and then we can like be these perfect light beings that will make the world a much better place.
So
That's like so
powerful.
prevalent and it's like and that drives people because that's like impossible. It's an
I
impossible goal. You're
know.
like setting yourself up for failure for one thing and like yeah.
Totally agree. I know
And I
that
feel like
narrative.
I've fell into that a bit.
What
I've fallen into that a bit in my
I
life.
did in the beginning. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
like, thought everything was dirty, and I was just like, horrible. It just put me like, oh, I need to do this because I'm never gonna, like,
Mm.
I mean, I totally don't even think about my issues like that anymore, from even back then. I'm like, God, I wasn't as bad as I thought I was, like, Jesus, like,
Yeah.
but, and like, thank God I went through those things because I wouldn't be right here, I mean, even when I started this practice, like, I was always like, God, I wish I would have come to spirituality sooner. And it's like, it's not how that works, like, it's always like when you need to. I do think there's more roadblocks in the picture now, but I mean, that's kind of like why it's a hard path, is to like figure it out, and like learn to understand yourself more. Like that's kind of the whole thing. It's the universe experiencing itself, right? Like it's important to go through that. But yeah, I mean, more societal efforts would be great to like helping folks to like understand that, you know, or just because our space isn't very facilitating of spiritual growth, you know, for just economic and social factors, you know. Ego is like huge, you know, right now, everybody, and consumer culture mixed with, you know, hard to survive if you're not, if you don't monetize all of your time. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm so grateful that like I just live pretty frugally. And it's like I have you know, I have hobbies that I don't make money from, and I never want to. Like I don't want to make money from them. You know, like that's not the point. And that just like kind of frees it up. So like I do these things when I want to, you know, and it's not something that like is pressured. I mean, not to say that I'm like living the best way, like, you know, sure, if I like needed to, I could, but I just, yeah, I like the mindset of not having to do that.
Yeah.
Hold on, Britannia's in. No. Hello. Oh, connecting to audio.
Hi, Britannia. You're muted.
Hey, what a long day, dude. I had an appointment. It's been like almost 2 hours since I've been here. I thought it was gonna be like a quick in and out, but it's been a kind of a bummer. My tortoise is way sicker than I thought he was.
Oh no.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, he his shell is like not forming as fast as it's supposed to, and he has like a respiratory infection.
oh,
But
Mm.
they said that those are
oh, you're
You're
muted.
muted.
She might have.
I like try to take really good care of him, and
You did.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, me going away for a few days for 4th of July, like him having like, I mean, I guess it's like normal to usually like drink their dirty poop water and stuff, so it's like not like it's like normal-ish kind of. But the shell thing is like
You're
kind of
recorded, by the
concerning.
way. We're recording.
Yeah. So, anyways, we don't. Yeah, my tortoise is gonna be okay, but
Oh, he's gonna be okay. That's good.
yeah, we're good in there. I just need to, yeah, do all the things that they told me to. So yeah.
Mm.
Good. Poor little guy. You got a sick
Mhm.
turtle. You just got him too.
Well, I think that the people that like breed tortoises and then like they're not. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever. They're not
Test
ideal
tortoise,
people.
poor thing.
Well, my
Tortoise
thing
mode.
is too is like when I asked about all the care stuff before from like the guy and the other vet that I called and talked to before I even got the tortoise, they didn't tell me like some of the stuff that the vet told me. So I kind of wish I brought him to the vet sooner, but I've only had him a few months and I didn't have any reason to. And the vet was kind of expensive. Like I didn't know that I literally just spent more money on his veterinary visit than the actual tortoise,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
which is totally fine because his health
Um,
is way more important to me than money. But yeah, anyways, he's my little friend and I need to take care of him, make sure he's safe and happy.
yeah. Well, good job.
What part of the book are you guys on?
We're just about to finish the talking about the way of the story, chapter 6, or the way of story. Um, I mean, we've been pretty critical.
Yeah,
How,
I mean, honestly, the second read, it felt like it was dragging a bit. Like it felt like she was trying to figure something out by writing it almost. It was
hmm,
more of like her personal journey and like I don't know. It was like interesting psychology to like see how you can get yourself through an issue by like watching how she like kind of evolves. But I feel like it was kind of a meandering a bit.
okay, I'm glad you saw that too.
Yeah.
I like how
Especially the second time. The first time you read it, you're like, oh my God, finally somebody gets what I'm dealing with. And then like the second time you're like, all right, like everyone deals with this
yeah, yeah.
in like somewhere, some form or another.
I mean, I feel like we just have such a good context too. Like spiritual practices have evolved since she wrote this a little bit, in a way that I think she might have set the foundations for in a lot of animistic kind of mindsets, but or maybe not set the foundations for, because I guess she's anthropologically reflecting on all these cultures, but it's like, I feel like, you know, as her being a Westerner, I don't know. It's interesting, but I mean, it doesn't align with what, yeah, anyway.
I feel like she comes across so eager culturally to have affinity for, you know, cultures that she's not from, that like I can see how it would be kind of like a little awkward. I mean, I feel like I'm that way, where I feel like I'm resonating and like discovering like fuller parts of my spirit by like interacting with them in like different mediums. So whether it's like shamanism from a Native American culture, or like Eastern philosophy and stuff. So, but it's like not things that I'm from, but I can connect spiritually with, which I love, because I think that that's kind of like part of the dancing with the ecology of the otherness, is like not just like spiritual otherness as in like other types of spirits, but like even the different spiritual otherness of like other humans, and like how those things can connect you. And like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but then we just kind of concluded talking about like being mindful of not romanticizing things that aren't like applicable to, like, that you can't bring any like real information out of, and also not like stigmatize, like too over stigmatizing, like saying, I think the conclusion that we were kind of just discussing was like, tell stories or else the earth will die, you know, was kind of like what what there was a lot of like rhetoric around. And I think that's like not the type of, yeah, framework that I'd want to have for addressing some of these issues.
Well, I think it's like a little black and white, and I think it's a little bit like, I think it's ironic that somebody that's telling you to conquer your fear in the darkness is like having some like edge of fear to them, like throughout the whole book. And like also like, I don't know, there's like that implication there with that too, that like she's kind of like not like, obviously I feel like, and I love this woman as a person, and I think she's amazing and stuff, but I feel like there's a lot of people that have a lot more magical inclination, and that they have a lot less fear because of that. And I think that her like emotionality and over romanticizing has to do with like that coping with like this fear of her fear. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I feel like it's like a reaction to her still having a little bit of fear of otherness, and like having to take a longer time to like deal with it because of that.
Probably accurate. What do you think, Cody?
And like her way
Yeah.
of romanticizing it is like to beautify it and make it more palatable for herself. Then she has to like fucking sift through that mirage.
Right. And I think that's like, I think she probably does have some tinge of the colonial impulse of explaining other cultures, and by certain certain colonial standards of like what it means. And definitely romanticizing in that sense. I think like I was talking earlier about like how easy it is to like how people have exploited um, a lot of these Native American stories and life ways that learn a little bit, and they'll go out and like try to make money doing it. And it's like they're just they're just kind of unearthing, like it's like unearthing an artifact and putting it in a museum, you know, instead of actually like living that story and like really helping people. And that's like, and that's kind of the time we're in, is like Haley saying that like tell stories or the earth will die. And what we've been come to is like everybody's knows this in a sense, and everybody's trying to tell their own story because they think that's going to heal the earth or heal us. And it's just like a cacophony of stories that actually there's no coherent like good narrative that actually like can that'll actually help all of us to heal what we're doing. I think there are some, and that, but that's my own bias. I feel like there's certain stories that I like that I've tuned into that I feel
That's
like are actually would be like a pretty amazing like.
Well, there's bias, and then there's like things that you resonate with. And I think that bias is a bad thing, whereas resonation is like a good thing, where like you're drawn to certain things. instead of other things. And, you know, it's not like you're dissing the other thing. It's just that one thing is more you know? Whereas I think that there's like bias where you're like, oh, this is the good part of the thing and this is the bad part of the thing. And, or just, I don't know, this way is good, this way is bad. I don't know. I feel like it's a little more black and white, but I feel like
Right,
she kind of, yeah.
but even what you resonate with isn't necessarily going to be a good story for the planet or something. That's what I'm saying is like there's so many different ways that like there's no cohesion, so it's like none of it's going to actually work to fix the planet. I'm being cynical here, you know, like
I mean, it's
Yeah,
important to be
I mean, I
cynical.
kind of feel like I disagree in the sense that, like, I think everything kind of all paints one big picture. Like, I feel like a lot of stories say the same thing in different ways, or like kind of touch on like the humanizing universal like soul experiences. And I feel like I see a lot of common stuff, but a lot of people don't, and a lot of people, you know, see it the opposite. So I see what you're saying, but I feel like it differently. But maybe that's my personal bias.
no, and that's the story itself too, and I agree with you in that. Like I read this book and I definitely like see my own resonances, my own, I don't know, I don't know, bias resonance for me they're the same, but like but I'll think about what you just said about the difference too, because I haven't really thought about it. But my own like I see this and I do see like this common like idea that like materialism is kind of an exploitation of the earth and in all its ways, you know, this kind of there is this underlying story in that is like the cause of and like our alienation from the oneness or from interconnectedness or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah,
Is what,
yeah.
and
Well,
that's the tendency that I see a lot in a lot of places, and that's one that I believe in too. But
I mean, I feel like if information, because I mean, biases, resonation, like whatever, like I guess you want to call it, I do think there's differences. I think that, but I mean, whatever information causes like change within yourself is like something, and like that change can only come from you. So, like, if, I mean, if we're talking about spiritual things, then like many paths, you know, type of thing, like if something can cause an alchemization to occur that needs to happen or some like awakening state, then like oftentimes, like even if that information comes from faulty things, it can still be used for good, you know? Like there's no like kind of orientation as long as like it's changing yourself in some way. Like sometimes even if it changes you for the worse, sometimes it can have positive like overall effects. Or like even if you go super left hand path with stuff and you know isolate yourself and like flagellate yourself or whatever, you know, it's like some of that can like produce the most enlightenment states and like is an important counterbalance to a lot of like ultra love and light states, you know? So like I think it's just the ability to use the information to like have more awareness and like experience more of yourself, which is the key difference from like something like materialism versus like an ecological perspective, you know, because your materialism shuts you off to experiencing yourself more for the most part, not necessarily. And we live in a materialist society that does have benefits. So and can lead to more information access and more ways in order we can grow and change and interconnect.
and being middle path, I assume you like understand that spirit suffuse or in some way that spirit suffuses material anyways, but it's still part of the it's still all
Okay.
part of ourself, right?
Yeah.
Or like
I
all
mean, the
the
same with
so-called
technology.
material and all the desires for the material and whatnot. So like that's still a spiritual thing too, you know, like it's just
Tools for, like, again,
that's my
agreed. Tools for liberate, you know, tools of liberation. Like, you know, that's you do this. And it's important to like innovate and, you know, collect. And I mean, you know, you should see the number of books that I have like laying around, you know, and just like cool outfits and stuff. It's like, I like that stuff. And like, yeah, I can like donate it at any second, you know, just because if I want to move out of country or something, but like, you know, I don't think I'm going to do that again, but you know what I mean? Like there's just, it just depends on what type of, what you're using to put those blinders up or not. I don't know, maybe. We all have to have times of rest too and put blinders up sometimes in order to recharge. Like that's also important. So like understanding how, but just like not beating yourself up about it. And then also like not thinking that you know, being on your cell phone for 1 second, it's like the earth is crumbling beneath you. It's like, that's like not, because that's not true. Like, it's not how it works. And like, yeah, there's some shit exploitative practices right now, but we can innovate in order to like regenerate these systems. Like it's not outside of our wheelhouse to like make ourselves a regenerative system. I think the systems of control that are fading away, you know, are literally dying or are like not happy and like going to the bottom of the ocean for no reason, you know? Like, I mean, there's just like things that are like happening that kind of point to that. So, um, yeah, refocus on regenerative things, which we've read a lot about, and animistic properties, I think will like have a good bridge into like having more sustainable futures, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I like what you said, and it did make me think, kind of rethink my cynicism a little bit too.
Ooh.
Well, like, yeah, and like I'm being so critical of all these spiritual traditions, like all this craziness that's popping up, but and I think I'm hearing George's voice almost here, telling me that like, you know, all that's part of it too. It's like, and for me, like, and for what you say is like everybody's like really is exploring different relationships than those that have been handed, different relationships with the world, with ourselves, than those that have been handed down by tradition or whatnot. And or people are really even exploring tradition deeply and what that means. And for like, and there's some nasty shit that's happening with that, you know. That's like major right wing spirituality is like goes down those pretty like dark racist and like ethnocentric rabbit holes, you know, of spirituality. But in a sense, like maybe that's like what's opened up right now is like this plethora of stories of trying to figure out our relationships when like relationships have been broken. So like something will come of it.
Well, and
Something,
that's the
it
problem.
is moving energy a lot in interesting ways.
Agreed. Like you mentioned earlier, like the Akashic records coming from that dude, you know, and Blachowski or like whatever her name, Helen's like
Blavatsky.
for, you know, premonitions or whatever. But it's like not everyone that uses the Akashic records is racist though. Like that's just like those two things don't, and you weren't saying that, but like what I'm saying is that the correlation doesn't like exist. Like I don't know if she's the one that came up with like the term Akashic record. I don't know. I don't think so. I think it was an Indian thing. Like a what's it called? A Vedic kind of but maybe not. I don't even know that. Like it's, but I do know like new age people that practice like that say
I think
Akashic
it's a Hebrew actually.
Hebrew. Oh,
I think so.
okay. I mean, it's
Anyway, sorry.
probably describing something, you know, something that
Yeah.
exists in multiple cultures anyway, you know.
Mhm.
I don't know the root of the word, but she did practice in India though. Like she learned from, and I think she was initiated, but Helen, whatever, you know, she was initiated into uh Vedic. It was either a Vedic or a tantric. It was some root Indian thing. And she was down there for a while and then came back up to Germany and had the eugenics thing. Or lots of things. I don't know. I watched a Hitler thing.
Okay. Oh yeah,
Oh,
they
damn.
related that to
A
Hitler.
history document.
Yeah. No, and there are a lot of really interesting, just like I'm reading a book right now that's like actually like chronicling a lot of the way that like right wing fascist thinking is like has like deep roots in spiritual traditions of the pretty much 19th and 20th, early 20th centuries, when that stuff was really coming about. So it's just so like a lot of, and that's it. So thus that's why you see a lot of people now, um, like yoga, a lot of yoga people and stuff, like going pretty right wing, like
Well, I mean, it's
pretty
easy to get down those rabbit
so
holes too.
and so like the belief systems, the story systems that have been like of people like Rudolf Steiner have, even though a lot of the like overt racism has been swept out of it, it's like still maintained this like um this fat kind of body and mind fascism that is like that, and that is actually being exploited by the right wing politics and being used
Oh,
and
100%. I mean, no offense, but
perpetuated.
that's what they've been doing, like as a political strategy since ever. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like certain political platforms, the best way to like manipulate people the fastest is to pit them against their own religion, and they won't go against that. So that's like how they've got this like weird spiritual hold on people, and like in these like moral decisions that are being made by masses instead of by like individuals that are having like intimate experiences with their own beliefs.
Well, it's interesting.
right.
All of the like Republicans that I know in this area are pretty like devoid of any type of spirituality. So, I mean, there are like, it is interesting that there are ideologies that don't have to do with that either. Like, I mean, my perspective, like anarchists, I think both sides, all sides are kind of like ridiculous because it's just a power grab. And like, if you're really trying to help the people, you'd have the people be in power. Like, there's no like, there's not this like this class, like we're in this like pseudo like fucking dystopian like class state that's just like
Yeah,
gotten ridiculous. And like, yeah, whichever way you think you can manipulate the audience better. I mean, can we send a mass of
Exactly.
people to do this, or can we send a mass of people to do this? It's like just spin the narrative and you have a whole thing. I know the people that are like Republicans around me would say like freedom is more, and then like I think both sides are saying that though, because I think liberals are saying there's more freedom on their side and Republicans are saying there's more freedom on their side. So it's just, again, I think that it's like
because they define
what
freedom, they're
angle,
defining freedom differently.
yeah, it depends on what angle you're looking at these things.
Yeah,
And I mean that's the whole like
But wouldn't true freedom be like beyond judgment? Wouldn't it be like
that's the point.
there's not like a right and wrong, but there is like actually bigger than yourself. So it's not your personal right and wrong. It's like the right or wrong of like the bigger picture, which you necessarily can't see if you have like these biases and beliefs that chain you to these like ways of thinking and feeling about other things that have nothing to do with your personal interaction with it. Like, I mean, that's kind of one of my biggest problems about like organized thought in certain ways, is that I feel like it's just like hurting a school of fish.
Yeah.
Because you don't really
yeah,
get what you want out of that idea. Everyone's compromising until it's so diluted that you're actually like almost like bastardizing the original thought. Or they're like, here's my thing, like I love the idea of freedom and democracy being like synonymous, but I don't believe they're mutually exclusive. And I feel like at this point in our political state, democracy has proved to be obviously a way of splitting and controlling people. And it's less about giving, because democracy is supposed to be putting the power in the hands of the people. But obviously, we put the power in the hands of a select people that are not for the actual greater good or people. They're for themselves. And it's been obvious to pretty much anyone that's ever cared about politics at one point in their life. And I feel like that's something that we need to address, whether it's like a democracy issue, like the definition of like what democracy is, or if it's the monster that we've made out of democracy. But I mean, that and capitalism go hand in hand with like making hell, putting us into a hell in a handbasket, like in a lot of spiritual ways. Like it's done nothing but kind of like take us away from that original experience, except for, I don't know, activism and senses, I feel like still has that.
I mean, the most time I was the times that I were the most depressed, otherizing, and hateful was when I was an activist. And like, again, I'm very grateful for that time, but the time I was, you know, most hated myself the most, I was on the street fighting for all of these things. And like, I'm sure that I was always looking for those activist group that brought people together. And I was organizing, I was trying to create those spaces. And it's like, they didn't exist because I think, you know,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that the activism made you feel that way, because I feel like it made me feel the opposite. It made me feel like empowered, like there were people that were on the same level that cared, and that like regardless of how aligned we were, like we all had this like end goal that was the same, where it's like we don't want people to be racist anymore. So like regardless of why we're out here, we all like want people to stop being racist. So like
but
the
I'm glad.
momentum and the end goal felt like camaraderie, and I felt like less like me against the world and more like the world is changing around us, and like I don't know, it just made me feel like more empowered and like things were more possible.
I didn't see any change. I saw a lot of like things change. I saw a lot of rules bent so that change didn't have to happen. And I think that's what I mean by like, I got like, I agree. I think the people that I was able to
You feel like
organize
people compromise
the events that
after
were
they get to
there,
a certain.
but the bigger picture was never, I mean, you know, we never got like structural change. Like even within college, like again, the most of the things I was running were small level, and like doing things within my school, like we wanted a multicultural center. Like they still don't have a multicultural center at Chapman University. And like we protested like so much, like we exposed so many things, like had like all of these campaigns. I literally started like this club that we would just run campaigns all the time. And like there was a lot of us too. And like I was constantly at City Hall doing homeless and stuff. Like it was just like I was all over the place, and nothing, it didn't change, you know. I mean, there was like very little, but I don't want to keep talking about this, maybe.
No, I mean, I feel you. I feel like
People are great. I think the community that it can, I think, yeah, having, but again, like having a bunch of people around some ideas is great until you start hating the people that don't see the same way as you. So, and that's what, like,
yeah.
really what I mean by like, it was very otherizing. Like, I saw my enemy every day at school because the kids that didn't do the protests with me were against me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
it was
Yeah,
just
but I never felt
very,
like that. And I feel like my stuff was at school, but a lot of it was like outside of school, so it felt like really big picture. Like I don't know. I did
good.
I'm sorry that that happened to you. I mean,
I
especially
mean, I
feeling
think
like the lack
most of
of
the,
support from students and stuff.
I mean, I feel like that's underlying in like all of them, though. Like, I will say that, like, yes, you have community efforts and you have small change that can happen in terms of like fundraising for things. But like, when it comes to actual structural change and like having big groups, like the police presence, the like, the otherizing factors are there, like, no matter what. I will say. And I think those are, again, like have been hijacked, like spiritually and physically, to create states of polarization so that we don't actually get anything done. Like that's the whole point of,
Yeah.
is to
Yeah,
like
I
not
agree.
get anything done.
And when I feel like there's like this hint of what I think really fractures people, and what I kind of wanted to stress too is like for me, like a lot of the political activism feels like strength in numbers and stuff, but when it gets down to it, there are going to be people spearheading it that eventually, if their character and their spirituality isn't strong enough, they're going to fold under the pressure and buy into whatever system's already broken, instead of withstanding the, withstanding whatever, personal like connection they have to it, and remaining like, this is big picture, this isn't about me and my personal gain in this experience, or like how much clout I get or whatever. It's more about mobilizing this change. Like I think a lot of politicians eventually just sell out before they get anywhere to where they could be a position of power to actually do change. And then by the time they get to those positions, they don't want change because they are happy with money and lobbyists and the crap that they were against before they started.
I mean, I think politics is more like a career. I think people that are in politics is more like a career now. So anybody like prophesizing that they're, or, you know, spewing that they're going to change anything, like as well as their intentions are, if they're going into the career of politics, they're not. Like that's not how it works, you know? I mean, you could say like I like, I mean, at least the politicians that
Well,
I,
that's why they use like religion as such a pawn in politics and like electability. Like if you're not basically like Catholic or Christian, like you really don't have much of a chance, like statistically speaking, which means that you have to think a certain way and be a certain way and value in other people specifically a certain way, or people won't vote for you.
Or you just say that
Which I
you know, it's like a demographic thing and like a
people say that they're like chill with other people, but like at the same time, their religion has persecuted those people for generations. So, and they continuously take away the rights of those people. So it's like their actions don't align with what they actually say they're doing.
or they're not actually Christian and they're just saying that they're Christian as
Well,
well.
that's what I'm trying to point out. Yeah, they're it's like a false spirituality, which I think is like a big problem in like all countries, but this country has like a big problem with that. Like I think it's coming to a reckoning where everyone wants to be spiritual, but they don't know where to go for like real spirituality anymore. And that's why people have ran away from the churches and like are trying to go back and like doing all that like searching and stuff. Like a lot of society is searching
Joining
now, which
yoga
makes me
cults.
hopeful. Yeah, it kind of makes me a little more hopeful, even though like there's a lot more weird cults and Scientology and all those weird kind of new age things coming up. It's like, I mean, I don't like people going down the wrong path, but I like seeing people searching for something real.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying before too. But
That's why I like bringing it back to the book with like the nature aspect of being back in nature. Like you'll get like a natural version of wisdom instead of this like diluted man version, like
yeah,
mankind version, not man, but like mankind version.
That's, I mean, that's a good
yeah,
into chapter 7, right? Way of non-duality.
Yes, that's I was kind of trying to segue back into the book.
Cool. Um, yeah, I mean, I think again, many paths, but also like everybody's at different levels. So like even when we took, you know, Jason Louv's class, which I never told you were in that one, but like, you know, our reflection of that now, you know, is very different than when we were in it, you know? And it's just interesting to see like different kind of stages of like our own like personal journeys and like where we're at spiritually and what like material is necessary as gateways into. I mean, I haven't revisited Jason Louv's like material and I actually kind of want to because he's interviewing really cool people right now and like doing some cool stuff, which is like exciting, you know? But I mean, yeah,
That's been my experience with this book, like exactly what you're saying, like revisiting this book and like seeing where I've outgrown this book in like a lot of ways, but it was so necessary for me to encounter this book when I did to like get to where I'm at.
yeah. So what do we think of how she presents non-duality in this chapter?
I thought it was cool. I mean, she used a lot of examples. It was just like
Mhm.
example after example. So like I get what you said earlier about it, like she's trying to figure it out for herself because she's like
Yeah.
different examples from different sources all kind of coming back to this idea of non-duality. It's not super philosophically rigorous. I think like a good philosopher could probably tear this apart pretty easily, especially like maybe a good like comparative religions person who like understands these different traditions and how like she's using different examples from different traditions to kind of say one thing, but it's not quite. And there's like, you know, the nuances between like, um, you know, animism and monism and different, you know, different forms. But
I
um,
almost think it's like a survey on like the different types of non-duality and like her recognizing them and giving people examples of how to like acknowledge different variations of non-duality in the world. But she is going through like a very personal perspective with like her examples because you know there's so many and the very like honed in on like her approach. So I think it can make it like inaccessible to other people that aren't really like yeah like connected to those things.
and I mean, I totally get it. Like, I really like, I really do follow like her, what she does, what she's trying to say pretty well myself. Like, I think, I mean, I almost don't find like non-duality or oneness doesn't quite, because it's like one and
A little
many
too
or
soft,
something, you
right?
know,
It's like a
for
little bit
me.
too soft of a phrase.
Yeah, I think like the interdependence stuff is really great. Like everything depends on everything to even exist at all. You know, I think that's a really important insight spiritually that I've had that like that, and I don't think I would have really understood that if I hadn't had that insight, actually felt it in this
Yeah, I was
reading.
gonna say it's a
This
feeling
book kind of
definitely more than just a not acknowledging of. I think it's like this feeling deep within where you feel
Yeah. And I think it all is like happening in a ground of like a container that's just that's not form, in some ways. That's the ground that you can actually kind of rest in and witness like witness it as just like passing energy in some way, or like engage in it how you will or whatever, but then like come back. But knowing that it's all, and knowing all the forms are interdependent, and any action that's like set forth in that comes from the direction of a embodied person or something is going to have its impact and will be impacted in turn. So that um so I think that like basic insight is really great, and having it all in a container too, so you're not just one thing, because it's like if you're everything, then you kind of like you start looking at things in relationship to each other, and like even your own emotions in relationship to what what you see or feel, and you can see how the emotional reaction is, and just and within that container you can just be like see yourself getting caught up in it, even like you could even notice that, and then
Yeah.
like coming out of it. So, and that's like some pretty um that's like pretty Buddhist stuff, right? It's like having having the ground of emptiness, or the I don't, I like to call it a ground of emptiness. I don't know if that's a great way of putting it, but um
Yeah.
It's like a clear lens.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's very
Yeah.
like how you describe that, and it's very relevant to like that's more of yeah how I would framework it as well, like an ecological container of interdependence, um, would be a really and I could see that, I mean I've definitely been challenged by that this week, and that's more of my practice now is in relation to other, of just other people more, mainly because I'm doing some spirit work, but I'm planetary stuff, and then kind of moving into like how do I relate to other right now, and there are some like it's good to have those instances that you can put yourself in a container and then interact with familiar other is like a good, because especially when the last chapter was talking about the stories we create, it's like the stories we create around other people and then how you react to them because of those stories, like that's a very I mean that's just yeah, this is just getting along with people, but like having a little bit less I need to work on having a little bit less rigid lines. Even though somebody's hurt me in the past, I don't need to like treat them really mean now, or be a bitch. Like it's not good, it's just not helping myself or the situation. Like, and it just doesn't propel them to not be be mean to me in the future because there's nowhere to go from there. So just a little self-reflection I was doing this past weekend of even though the things that were done were really bad and like me saying a word doesn't just justify how it actually should be, it's like I still need to meet that with like that's where those people are right now. They were not they did not keep me safe. It's my job to keep myself safe, stay away from them, but I don't need to treat them like they're horrible or like the horrible thing that exists in the world. Sorry, I'm on a rant now, but I hope this is kind of, being able to say like what I want to say is that that is still a reflection of me, especially because it's somebody within my community that I see often, that I still have interactions with, that I have to be around. Like there's a reason for that. If we're, if this is all a geodome of karmic experience, there's a reason that this person is like still in my space right now. And like I could either fight this all the time or I can learn to like see myself in them a little bit, and at least like how would I want to be treated even if I like shout all over my friendship. Sorry, my family's screaming. Yeah, like yep, that's my self-reflection as of late. So non-dual states.
Yeah, in the container of
Community.
interdependent energies, of communal interdependent energies, like I mean we each have like these energetic tendencies, like made by the cells in brains and bodies, right? Contained in that. And like, so we are encountering we're encountering other beings, complex beings of interwoven energies, right? With that have their own histories, their own ancestry, their own um like just personal days, that the day they're having and their interactions. So what they're carrying with them, I guess, the spirits and the energies they're carrying with them. So it's like,
Yeah.
so like what you experience is like your energetic patterns like have rubbed with this other person's energetic patterns, and you've created like some kind of like a barrier, like a sharp line or something, that you now know that like that you just can feel that energetic pattern because you do the work, and like be able to like open it up because like you have that skill now, because otherwise like you wouldn't be able to see that because you're just caught up in it. It's not.
When again, I think opening it up allows for more release. Like, I think these people will be a lot less offended by things that I say, or not be like all over me, trying to get me back or do something weird, if like I just like let it go a little bit more, because then it's like, oh, she doesn't care anymore, so I don't care either. And it just
Yeah,
might like resolve itself, because the behavior does not align with my space, but do I need to kick and shove its way out, or can it naturally like flush itself out of the system? That's more of, I want the latter, like have a healthy let go instead of like a fighting,
yeah.
type of thing. It doesn't
Because
help.
that's like because that's a relationship that feels better for you. The fighting thing doesn't feel very good, but if you have this like letting go and just opening up, like that feels pretty good. Then you're not like there's no tension there anymore.
Mhm.
You're actually it's non-violent in the sense
Mhm.
of this chapter, like in
Mhm.
Thich Nhat Hanh's work. That's like not doing violence, and that's yeah, I mean, that's a part of this book I find really, I mean, it's really challenging to not do violence in this world that we live in, because our whole society is set up violently. Like, it's like, and in some ways, like, it's like, we're just learning to like, how do we then relate? I'm just learning how do I relate to this violence and become less violent. But like, I think what frustrated me, especially that like final prayer, that like the vows. I'm like, you're vowing to like
Yeah,
do all these things. It's like, God, that's how hard are people going to be on themselves when they can't live up
I
to
know.
these vows? It's like in this world, like again, it's like we're rubbing against like so much violence that there's like we have to like, and we have to do violence to survive in some sense. And I can see that maybe in some of these indigenous worlds, like, and like these older traditions, when there wasn't so much, when we're not already engaged in so much chaos in our lives, like so much violence in
There was
this
still
world, but
violence
like,
though. I mean,
yeah, I know there was yeah, it's
a
like,
lot.
but in some sense, like there could be like better relations and harmonious living and stuff like that. And that's
I
like
don't think it was really like
within,
that a lot of
while
times.
there, I don't either, but that's there. She definitely idealizes
I
that
know. That's not, I mean, at least from what I've
romanticizes.
learned in Maori culture and Native American culture, I think that the Aboriginal Australian people were just around so long that they kind of resolved a lot of their like conflicts. Like, I do think that society kind of got it figured out towards the end before they were like completely annihilated by, whatever, but Australians or, English. But
Yeah,
I think before, I mean, they had like societies that were at peace with each other, where like if you look at the indigenous New Zealanders, they were always fighting, like it was constant and like brutal.
yeah,
And that's why they didn't get taken over, because they were like they were just at war all the time. And the Native Americans had like total wars, and they were big time, like big, like state, wide war kind of thing. So,
yeah. And I even learned recently there's a theory that like the ancient Pueblo civilization fell because it fell, right? And there's a theory that it fell because the masses were eating way too much corn, and it was fucking up their heads, their brains, and like making them weird, like crazy and like developmentally stunted. But like the elites were eating like much more meat, like turkey and meat, and like so the elites just were people that were smart, like rich, and they were smarter, and they just exploited these other people and like to death, and it just like and something caused the fall of like
Oh,
that's like fucked up,
that's
that's
totally
like
messed up.
that's like
Jeez.
totally
It
not.
sounds familiar though. That's like literally what's happening right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, yeah, I know. High fructose corn syrup.
Yeah. Corn's in a lot. I mean, all of our animals are fed corn.
Yeah.
Which is like not good. Like they're not animals aren't growing and cultivating corn and eating it, but that's just not what they do.
Yeah.
Peen. Yeah.
That's hurt. Funny. Yeah.
But anyway, that's a
I
digression.
feel
But
you.
yeah,
I read these vows and I thought the same thing. I was like, this is heavy, this is a lot. I mean, it's good to strive for maybe, but I think again, it's more like again, I don't approach things like this anymore. Like I used to, but like now it's understanding, okay, I really want to hurt this person. Why do I want to hurt this person? Like, is that, I mean, I don't actively think of hurting people. Like, I don't actively think of that all the time. More of like, I don't want to speak nicely to this person right now. Like, what is causing that? You know what I mean? Like, how can I like learn to navigate this space better? It's not like I am bad because I thought this thought. It's more like, where does this come from? Like, what does this have behind it? Is there reason behind it? Yes. Is there a way that I can navigate this in the future where it doesn't have to involve me saying hurtful things? Yeah. So like, that's more of like where you come to those type of agreements with yourself. Like, is this benefiting me? Is this not? Is this where I'm what direction I'm trying to go? Is it not? How can I alchemize this space and make friends with my enemies so that they still have a place? Like, the reason I want to say mean things is because I'm trying to protect myself. Can I protect myself in other ways that like will actually be more sustainable than like being mean to some girl? Like, yes, like, and it'll feel a lot better all the way around. So like it satisfies that spirit that's trying to protect, but it's still like has a maybe nonviolent approach.
Yeah, I think you and I are perfect friends in the sense that like I come from like a way passive experience of like trying to defend myself, and you come from a very like aggressive. And I think like that's why it's really good that we are like, oh, we like talk about things, like interact with stuff like on a level where we both are like deep people that care emotionally and spiritually about ourselves and the other people involved. And like I come from like the opposite one where I'm like, everyone's just gonna know that I'm nice, and they're either gonna leave me alone or feel like shit for being mean to a nice person. And eventually, when a nice person tells you that you've hurt them, and like that they usually don't go out of their way to even have a confrontation, and that they do to tell you specifically like you're fucking up right now in the friendship or something. And I feel like it's a healthy way of defending myself, but like I have to work on like my healthy boundaries to like not get walked all over. I think like that's where I've had my issues, is being too passive in my assuming that people are gonna like do or see or say or eventually like want to like acknowledge that they've done something wrong and like change it or fix it.
And they
Where
don't.
like and they don't. So like where you shine the light on it like aggressively, I think is helpful for me in my life. And I feel like where I can kind of like gel a little bit with the whole like passive part like is something that we can like help each other with. Like I've learned a lot from like you being my friend, and it's helped me like become a better, fuller, like more well-rounded like person, like and like be able to stand up for myself in like better ways. Like I've noticed it a lot in my life, and it's translated into a lot of things.
Good. And yeah, I'm learning how to be nicer. No, I am nice. I'm a nice person, people. But I don't put
I
up
could
with
attest to that.
Thanks, Cody.
Haley's one of the best people ever.
Oh, that's so nice.
At least in my life.
And you are in my life too. Yeah, I mean, reflections are around. I do think that there's bound like it's a but it's I do think it's magic is about boundaries though too. Let's be real. Like or understanding how to navigate through the other. Like I think a lot of these thoughts like that's okay, yeah, and this is what I did want to talk about. Like a lot of this framework leads you so open where it is not good too. Like I think you need to have separation. You need to understand where your boundaries are, but also how they can adjust and like what type of, you know, how you can influence but not absorb, or how you can what you when you do absorb but not influence. There's just different and that's all boundaries work, which is having identification within yourself and being able to call things different things. And sometimes those minutia get lost when you just have blanketed terms like non-duality. I feel that's my critique. What do you think,
I feel like,
Cody? Or yeah, sorry, Tony.
no, yeah.
Either.
Yeah. I think yeah, I think you're right. I think having and I mean she had the blanket term, but then she really did use a lot of examples. So you got hand it to that. And I think her examples definitely do lead to like this seeing this like how everything is an exchange of energy, like what she's talked about, like learning from the previous chapter, the language, learning the language of that which you encounter. So it's like learning to um bet improve relationships overall, like better learn how to listen to other and make way for other if needed, or like know how your boundaries relate to the other, so like be able to, if someone's coming, I mean literally if someone's coming to stab you, like you might want to like really violently defend yourself, but like energetically you might do the same, be able to like set a strong, solid, almost like assertive and angry boundary, like we have all the range in us to be all these things, but just like how do we balance them and harmonize them
Well, I think
and
that's like part
harmonize
of
our
like
own.
what this book is touching on is like recognizing the other and like recognizing like the non-duality in it where you see the light and the darkness in it. So you can like really feel like what it actually is that you're working with or what you're talking to or what you're dealing with or who you're dealing with or you know what I mean? Like you have to like clean the lens, but then you have to like learn how to like acknowledge what you're seeing, like and take it all in. Like I mean I've been kind of going over this like weird thought in my head. It's like just holding space for the things that you want to recognize give you so much more room to recognize it.
Very true.
So like yeah,
Yeah,
maybe having these shit people around us is like not ideal, but it is a good way to recognize what shit people look like.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and to recognize that in ourselves too. Yeah. The
Exactly.
shit in ourselves that
Yeah.
reflected by our reaction.
And they're a part of our community, whether we like it or not. I mean, they're not going anywhere, apparently, according to them. So, again, unless they flush themselves out, then like we got to learn how to alchemize that stuff because I don't want that in my space all the time. So, like, how can like we influence them to like be better people? Is like more, I mean, that sounds really messed up, but like,
No, it's like kind of challenging people to raise to your vibration. Like if you want things to be a certain way around you, then you like act that way and you kind of don't like you kind of hold people up to that. And when they don't, you like be like, hey, like I feel like this situation was uncalled for, or like, I'm tired of having negative experiences in this way. Like, you kind of like, I don't know, like,
I
I feel like
know
it's like talking to a little kid, but like, yeah, I've been having trouble with that. But like, I think
we've done
the last like year or so, I've had to like confront like all these people that we all find problems with around us, and I've had to like been forcibly like put into situations to confront all these people and all this stuff and really cut them off and put boundaries on them and like kind of let them know how they've hurt me and like why I don't want to be close to them. And I think that kind of held a mirror up to them to see like what they needed to see in themselves a little bit. Cause like I've seen some change and some acknowledgement of like what I'm talking about to these people and the people around them. So it's not like a secret that like this person has these kinds of problems and that like it's going to be this way when you hang out with them. And like if they're not working on it, everyone's going to know.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's just a time game here. We'll see.
Yeah.
And it's a proximity thing because I think like the trash does take itself out or like push itself to the fringes in a lot of ways where like people who aren't on board aren't going to be on board and the vehicle is going to keep moving without them. So if they want to be in like a middle path and like be on the vehicle of change, they can. And if they're not, they're going to literally be left behind and nobody wants
I
that
don't
for themselves.
I don't know that the awareness is there for them to see that they are missed the bus, you know, like that they're not like on the train, they're just being like dragged behind it right now and they're like, oh, I'm leaving this thing, you know? Like I don't know. Anyway, we could
And
talk.
there's a difference, but yeah, well, there's a difference between like forced change and like proactive change where you're like, oh, I'm trying to be a better person versus like, oh, the situation's really like left me no other choice, you know? I feel like both of them cause growth, but one of them's like you're initiating the positive change, whereas like the other one could be like a negative experience for yourself.
We'll see how this.
Yeah, I mean, it's all just there's not. I mean, there's I don't know how much control any of us can have that much control. We can't control other people that much. I mean, again, it's like our own limited experience at trying to like come in and like change another person's like limited experience that's coming from a much different place. You know, it's like their energy is already like has a certain momentum, and it's like coming in and your energy hits that their momentum, and like of course it's going to change them no matter what, however you interact. But like that's the art, I guess, is then like how do you learn to interact with the person in
Yeah.
a way that
Yeah.
like guides a positive change that feels good interdependently, not like, you know what I mean, like,
Yeah.
so
Well, there's
like,
like,
and there's only
yeah.
so much you can do there, you know, because their momentum is already in some direction, you know. So,
I
Yeah.
feel like there's two proximities to have. One is like I call it the observer, where like you're holding space for the thing. So like the observer effect in science, like just merely by observing something changes the outcome. It's like the kind of phrasing, meta, like whatever,
Keep your
micro
eye on
phrasing
it.
of it. So just like having your eye on it or the awareness of it changes like that thing. So there's like one way of holding space where you're more like inward and like looking out, and then there's the one where you're like close up in it and you're interacting with it because you're like your energies are commingling, like you're having to interact with this thing. And that's
Yeah.
where it's like more active than like the passive like observing. So I feel like there's two ways that you can like treat the world that will like change the way things go for you or like the things that interact with you.
Yeah, I mean, I want to make my interactions more impactful, but we'll see. Well,
That's
there's
why just being present sometimes, like me just showing up to a lot of events has like created like
I mean, I disagree with some of
friendships
that. I agree and
and
disagree because there's
but,
some.
like, I mean, us holding space for each other, like, and going through all of our things for so many years, like, you really get to know how people deal with things and, like, how you can, like, be supportive of them, like, not doing the same mistake again or something, things like that.
But it's observer effect is different from like interacting. And that's what, like, if you're forced to interact or be around their space, like, yeah, you could be within proximity and never interact. Like that's kind of a difference of boundaries of like, do I have to interact with this person? No. Like, can I cohabitate the same space and not have to interact? Yes. You know, there's like kind of different and like, but when I interact, I want it to be impactful or whatever, or like I think that there's some instances where you should choose not to be in people's presence because they will rub off on you. Like, you know,
No, I agree. I agree.
I mean, a big event, not so much, but yeah.
Just like in any like who you choose to put yourself around, kind of.
Intimate, you know, I don't have to go to dinner with these people, you know? Um, let's get back to the book though. Are there, well, yeah, do you have any, you had some quotes, Cody, right? Should we do quote time or is there any like last kind of bits? I feel like we covered a lot of it, right?
All right, I'm just gonna find a quote that I didn't review. Here it is.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know what it is, what it's gonna say.
Okay.
Just because I have a quote.
Cool.
If we look deeply, we find that we do not have a separate self-identity, a self that does not include sun and wind, earth and water, creatures and plants, and one another. We cannot exist without the presence and support of the interconnecting circles of creation. The geosphere, the biosphere, the hydrosphere, the atmosphere, and the sphere of our sun, all are related to us. We depend on each of these spheres for our very existence.
Hmm.
The spheres of the
Yes.
planets.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting when you think of like space travel and things like that, you know, when it comes to things like with quotes like that. I mean, I always think, you know, we just have so many sci-fi stuff now that's like it's very interesting to think like if someone was born elsewhere or like is that even possible? I mean, there's also theories that like we've never made it outside the atmosphere, you know. It's like yeah, I don't know if that's really I think that's kind of hogwash. It's probably like on the same lines of
Yeah.
flat earth thing, but like who knows? I mean, it could be all gelatinous goo out there and as soon as our spaceships hit it, it just bursts into flames. Like I don't know. That's what like I've heard from some conspiracy person, but yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, would how much of like our like when they say like yourself doesn't exist, but you could like as of right now with our you could technically remove yourself from this planet, you know? So it's just very interesting. I don't know if you'd be the same person. I mean, obviously, because time dilation would be all weird, but
Do you want to hear like well it's kind of morbid but cool. When you get cremated, when they burn you, you're because it like goes straight. It's like basically like blasting your like particles out into space.
cool. That's what I want to have happen. I want to be thrown into the sun.
Well, that's yeah. Then you'd like to be cremated because I found it. It was like really beautiful. It was in one of the like Tara Brach talks or something I was listening to, and she was talking about how like we all go back to we all go back to it in some way, but it's like how do you want to like go back? Do you want to go into the earth? Do you want to go into the space? Like how far do you want to travel? Like your particles, how like physically, like when you become when you're like already gone like you can like choose where you want to like spread yourself, which is like a beautiful thought because you're really like choosing like a lot of really cool metaphorical and spiritual things with that. And like what do you resonate with? Do you want to like go into the ocean, and do you want to be buried into the ground and grow back up through the earth? Like are you like what do you resonate with? Like do you want to go out, like do you want to be burned and go out into space? And like a lot of the people that like have similar feelings about like spirituality and life and stuff choose similar like afterlives, like in what they believe afterlives are, and just like the choice of like burial, funeral. Like there's traditions that come with like the spiritual beliefs that are like that's why they're all like religious ceremonies. Like I think that's so beautiful that there's so many different ways to spread yourself even after, like in like a physical afterlife, not even just like a spiritual one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
there's so many ways to, it's like part of our relation with everything. It's like all the different ways to relate within everything
Mhm.
that humans have come up with.
Like that's so cool to think that like your ashes eventually kind of like or like the smoke from your ashes kind of like scatter into the universe
Yeah.
The
and
notion
like could possibly become like stardust, like or could be consumed by something else so farther than you could ever imagine. Like I don't know, I think that's so exciting in some weird way.
Yeah, it is. That's really cool. Like it could become part of an ocean on another planet that's just starting its own development, its own development of life or something, and be like the catalyst that sparks life or something on another planet.
cool. Yeah, page 165. These notions of inner being, interrelatedness, interdependence, and interpenetration are not far from the ideas of bootstrap physicists who see that not even particles can exist independently. No phenomenon can exist just in and of itself. There is no essential self, no separate self. Sitting in this high desert in Baja, I could see that the tree does not exist independent of the atmosphere. The sage blossom is not separate from the summer storm. The crow is not separate from the coyote. Which again, like I agree with, but I think it's important to have like identification of it. And I think physicists would say that too. Okay, we could see that this thing is there and it experiences different behaviors when it's around different things. Like that it does maintain some core element of like what it looks like, but it morphs as it changes its environment. And I mean, I guess that answers the question about space. It's like you would still be of the earth, you would just have a different relation to the atmosphere around you. And it would probably change you a lot, but like that's what we don't know, I guess. But yeah.
I mean, just the radiation out there like changes the particles too, like radiating things changes it. So it's like interesting how there are physical and I guess like spiritual like flows in the universe that have like a very tangible interaction with particles, but they're still like so unexplainable. Like I don't know. I think there's like a lot of spirituality that kind of bridges into science in like those ways. When you like see the interdependence, but like the way that it has to coexist to be I don't know. It's like interdependent in like a way that I don't know.
It's hard to wrap the mind around like how it's like interdependent. It's like everything needs each other to exist, and in some ways like that does make kind of everything as one organism or one thing, because yeah, it's hard to wrap the mind around like one and many. It's
yeah, I mean that's empathy is, you know, I mean that's such a beautiful concept to be able to see yourself in others, and understand how you would want to have reactions towards you, or you know how you would want to interfere with yourself if you were like that, you know. I mean that's interesting.
but it's more like there's yourself can't like exist like in any form without relationship something else.
Yeah,
I don't know if maybe I didn't quite understand what you were saying just now, but like there's not, so it's like I don't know. What did you mean by empathy in this sense?
like seeing that just like I am you experience in a different space time, like really, right? I mean,
Right.
so I mean that's how I define empathy personally. I mean, I don't know, that's not right. Like that's not the actual definition, but like that's what I've always seen it as. I don't know. I think that's what you're
I see it as like in it's like you and I are interacting right now, and in our interaction like we're creating the like moment of self. So right now we're like in this funny like bubble of like we're both like a blob of self, of part of the energy of the whole self, you know, like it's like these energetic connections. And then so like empathy is just the ability to like maybe like have your energy penetrate the other person's energy more, in a sense, where like there's an understanding, or maybe like some kind of more resonance of the energies, or an understanding of the resonance of of the other energy within the whole. You know, it's like and that's just a part of the whole that's doing that. You know, it's only just like a little like, because like my whole biophysiology is the energy that's like interacting with yours over this computer that over like hundreds of
days away.
miles.
Yeah.
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 So it's just like this, but like, and that of course that like makes empathy harder too on, I think online. I think it's a lot harder than just being in the presence of a person. a lot harder.
Yeah.
Um, because you're not getting a lot of the we just don't get a lot of the normal like cues that our energy is attuned to like be able
Absolutely.
to um I don't know that it feels this I'm feeling like tangential here, but like
Yeah.
that's what that's the interdependence. It's like this energetic like dance that if it didn't have it's like one thing didn't have anything to dance with, it's like it doesn't exist really. It's like there's nothing to like give it anything, any sort of recognition as a thing at all. So it's necessary that particles, whatever fundamental particle or whatever it is, like has something else to
Has relation to something.
yeah, has relation. So so it's not it's like yeah, I don't know if it's non-dual, it's just
Well, there wouldn't be like growth without like interaction in that kind of sense. You know what I mean? Where like you kind of need the other to change you and for you to change it. And that's what like that constant ebb and flow is in a lot of like energetic ways, I feel like. Where things are constantly influencing each other in like an alchemic way for like reaction.
yeah.
And that's like part of just like the whole like fractaling. That's why I think it's so fascinating that like there are patterns in that reaction, like within individuals, within societies, within like as big or as small as you want to go. Like there is like this weird inherent structure, like in a physical but also like very like I think spiritual way. So like that's why I think it's more interesting now that I've kind of come to terms with that and I'm more like, okay, there are like beings that like I don't know, I think that like the angel work and stuff for me was like a little weirder to like wrap my head around just because of like I don't have any negative things towards like angels. If anything, I like get that most, but I was still just like, I don't know, like how do you know what you're like with Brother Rocker? Like how do you know what you're interacting with and getting to know it and stuff like that? Like I don't know. Like I feel like I always have like I think people are better than they are, and I don't want to do that a spiritual way like either, which I guess that's my like thing that I've been working on and like trying to be more comfortable with.
Good. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, I do think that like that's a part of reality is being, yeah, connected. And like those reflections aren't all good and bad. They're opportunities for growth, I guess. I mean, we're always moving forward and now is changing based on all of our behaviors of all time, right? So like
Yeah, I mean, I feel like sometimes some of the shittiest circumstances that I've like dealt with have like made me feel the most proud about my character because it's really shown me like who I am and I'm actually like happy with that or good with that. Like the way I deal with things I'm like proud of, which I think is like something that is not like something you can tell or show people. It just is. And I don't know, that takes time for people to like trust that about you, like as a person. I think that's where like that interaction is like very like growth oriented.
agreed. Cool. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I just had a thought about the um that last vow thing. It's like all this like it feels like kind of contradictory, and I think this just came to me from what you were saying, Britannia, and I don't indirectly maybe, but it's like I vow to blah blah blah. It's like what is the I that's vowing to these things? It's like
I mean, it says
we're so, especially in our energetic like in the atmosphere of energetic within which this vague thing I call I exists. There's like some sense of that having some agency, but within that energetic there's so many forces that like are going to change that I, that like to make like that vow to like purify, to be like pure as an individual. It's like it seems like that automatically like solidifies this sense of separate self that in some ways that is like vowing to be this like perfect being against the world, instead of like just being this like letting yourself become like aware of that energy in relation to everything, and not having to like will any part of it to be any different than what it already is.
I agree. I think that's the more pagan route. Like that aligns more with like apocalyptic witchcraft, you know, or like recognizing darkness. Like as I mean, it's prefaced to where this vow disagrees with what you're saying, but I think that you're right. Like it's implied that you're reaching this level of purification that's a self thing and is unattainable. So like and puts this separation there because you cannot achieve it. You know, you could strive for those moments, but I think that's where, but because it's knowing how deeply our lives intertwined, we vow, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's frameworked in a way where it wouldn't be like that. But then what it's suggesting does, I think, have those type of tendencies. I feel like, yeah, more pagan route would be like to, yeah, be able to call out or be able to integrate or be able to howl at the moon or go, you know, understand your like presence in a space and how like you could affect change by killing, you know, by like being there, you know, by like, yeah, blood stuff. I mean, that book, I finished that book. It was great, actually. The last chapter was like so worth it. I'm so glad.
I'll have to
Wait,
reread
which
it.
book again?
Apocalyptic
The
Witchcraft.
Pocket. Okay. Yeah, I want to get that book. You that one and the Holy Heretics. I want to. What? Yeah, those ones.
But yeah, or like I mean summoning demons so that you can like chat with them and interact and dance with them and like you know and see what happens, you know, like it kind of an experimental spirit of interaction and you know, it's like I think that's I don't know, to me that feels healthy.
I agree because I think these things exist. Like they just do. Like it's not like if it's like you know, but it's not so denying, you know, or shutting out or like suppressing some of these things, I think is what causes like cancers within our society. Like it's literally denying half of yourself. I mean, maybe not half, but like things that exist in your environment. Like if you don't know how to interact with like the negative things that come in your path, then like, yeah, it is going to be like blinders on your life or like not understanding how to like actually like.
Well, then you're not facing anything and alchemizing anything because you're not actually like interacting or facing or acknowledging it.
Exactly.
And then like diagnosing all these like societal problems as being like in some way related to like fear or violence, or like fear in particular is like new age, you know, it's either love or fear.
Oh
And
yeah.
then you're like, and then it creates this like automatic like fear bad, love good, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um violence bad, peace good. It's like,
Sometimes
and
you
where
should
is
be
there pure
afraid.
any pure violence or pure peace? You know, and like we were saying earlier, like sometimes you need to be violent, you know, especially in a violent society. It's like, yeah.
I read a quote on my Facebook from the memories and it really struck me because I was like, yo, dude, I was feisty. And it was at what point do we match the violent force that is like at what point do we match the force that is like coming at us violently, like how do we engage with that? But it was like it was more like in a challenging like at what point do we become violent because we have to combat this thing. And I know it's kind of an interesting like I don't know. It's an interesting thought too, because I think that's part of like what acknowledging like our own darkness is that we do have the capacity to go there. Like all of us do. It would take something specific, like in every single person to be like, I have to like get crazy right now to like defend something, you know, whether it's an idea, a belief, a person, your pet against a coyote, you know, like everyone's got like something that they're willing to go, you know, a hill to die on or something too. So I think there's something there with like the whole like acknowledging and interacting with like the darkness. I think it's kind of like alluding to that, maybe. I don't know. Because I feel like that's like what that, like challenging your inner darkness and like confronting your fears, like the worst parts of yourself are the fear and the anger. But like in psychology, they say the anger always comes from fear. So that's really like the source of it all. And like any darkness, like in any animal that's defending itself and may like hurt you in the attempt, you know, it's a fear driven response to its interaction with you, just as like people have with each other or people have with spirits or, you know, religion or whatever the ideology or, you know, social constraint is that they're combating.
Yeah, and it's real art to like know when to stop with certain energies, like fiery energy will consume and destroy, or it could just like cleanse a small bit of the situation and allow room for more growth, and better growth.
Mhm.
Um, so it's like knowing when to like hold back your fire. I mean, humans haven't really figured that out very well. It's created a lot of problems, but
I
that's
think
the
it starts with individuals too, because like the less people that are okay with violence, the less likely it is to happen.
yeah. But a little bit of violence, I think is like okay. It's like getting like having a certain energy level of like maybe like two testosterone fueled people who are like getting really pissed off at each other need to like have a little scrap, like literal physical scrap, and like to like let it out and then hug it out and then be done. It's like sometimes that's the way to go. And like, so it's like but that gets out of hand in a not a good container when like somebody feels just like resentment, and or like or the victor feels like really proud and they want to go dominate other people, that kind of thing. So that's where it gets out of hand. But the violence itself, like a little scrap, doesn't have to be that way. It can be, and actually Tyson Yumkaporta talks about that in one of the chapters of his book, like
Yeah,
this like fight like really well contained like
he was
violence.
describing it.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
I
he
mean,
was,
I have friends that are fighters, and so I totally get like the balance of like
yeah.
where it is like a flow and a dance and it's cathartic and it's like they're both there on a level together, like kind of meeting each other in a mind, physical, energetic, spiritual puzzle that they're kind of like
Yeah.
defining who they are in that moment, like by the moment. And it's not about ego, it's not about emotion, it's about like this kind of flow state that you get into. And like I get that because like I mean I think we all have like a healthy dose of like anger, and I think anger can be healthy if you get like if like art or like something circumstantial in society spurs you like with like anger or hurt or pain to like motivates you to do something positive, then I think that's like net and positive, right? Like even though it was like a horrible thing like that had to happen to make you want to change for the better, like put work into changing the environment around you for the better. But I think when things get so bad, it only leaves room for people to change it for the good in like a
It's
lot
just
of ways. Like it
harvesting.
backs you up into a corner.
It's just those that harvest off of bad energy that like propel them so that they could justify doing more bad, like doing more things for themselves.
Yeah. Well, and people control each other with fear. And I think that's like where like fear has become a toxic thing in society instead of just like a healthy, natural in like emotion that people will go through. It's become like a control state where if people are constantly in a state of fear, then they're so much easier like controlled monetarily, emotionally, behaviorally, like everything. Like if you're keeping people afraid, they're gonna go back to church. They're gonna keep giving monies to the commodities because they want to keep stress buying on Amazon. You know, like it keeps
And
people from actually thinking and feeling in like the correct ways.
And the reason for that control is fear, which I think that's really funny how that,
That is trippy.
like, there would
It's
be
the
no need
Ouroboros.
to,
It's
there'd be
it's the
no need to
Ouroboros.
control people if you didn't fear them. And so it's when you control them through fear. Wow.
Oh my God, my manager at my restaurant gave a haunting speech. Um, like yesterday. It was kind of gnarly. And like from him saying it, he's like East Coast mobster vibes. Like when he said it, it was like kind of like a little trippy because I could see how dark he was. Like it was like a deep glimpse into his darkness. And I was like, yo, he's showing me like his shadow right now. Have you guys ever seen The Bronx Tale?
Should I stop the recording? Any final notes on the book? Does this have to do with the book?
I mean, yeah, it's like
Okay.
it was basically like the movie, like the question is um like do you stay passive or do you stay violent, like the question is like do you want people to fear you or love you, and the mob guy gives this gnarly speech where in the movie my manager quoted it, but he was basically like it's better to have people fear you because like and it was just like the way that like it controls them and like the way it keeps us, it's a self-fulfilling cycle, so once you put it in motion that it like kind of is like a weird polarity where it kind of like keeps going within itself and like it kind of creates more fear and like keeps the fear going. And I don't know. It was just I don't know, it was just like an eerie quote because hearing people say it out loud and like knowing that they believe it, like there's people out there that like really do like just vibe off of fear. That's how
Because
they
if you
like
make
interact with
people,
people. That's
There's
how my
if you,
manager interacts with the whole staff. And he's like, you treat them good enough to where they like want to stay, but like not good enough to where they like will uprise against you. And that's how he runs his restaurant. So that's why it was such a trip and a mind fuck to have him telling me this after I've like seen this movie and know how like gnarly it is. And having my manager give me like the same speech, it was crazy. And I was like,
uh,
man, I'm interacting with some dark shit at work right now. Like, this crazy.
so he believes that that it's better to have people
Here.
fear you than to
Yeah.
love you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
1,000%,
Yeah.
dude. He just like nailed that in the coffin like last night.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting some people get crazy rewards from that. So that's true for them.
But it was like a energy balance thing was like his point. It was like a way that he wants to interact dynamically with people. It's like a very like not only intentional but like malicious way of using energy that you could treat differently, I guess is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say. So like interacting with our darkness and like having compassion and interacting with other people's darkness and having compassion, I think keeps us more in like a magical mind and also keeps us more like cued in on like a more like middle path vibe
Yeah.
than what the other people are doing on the other sides. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
kind of weird looking over every once in a while and being like, yo, dude, like that exists over there. Crazy.
Yeah. Hey, you do you, man. I don't really want.
Yeah.
Yeah, like how long do I want to keep working here now?
Yeah. Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah. Okay. So let's finish the book next time. It only goes to page 211 or 209, 208, I guess. So that's 40 pages, which I feel like we've been doing 50 or 60. I think this last one was like 60. So I feel like that's more than doable. There's an epilogue after that. So, I mean, we could read that too. It seems like so yeah, just the rest of the book, right? We're okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we'll talk about what we want to do next time. Think about what books we're reading next. Right?
All right. Yeah.
Okay. I'm stopping the recording.